What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the interweb? Now, to preface this before we get really deep into it, I sold off my last batch of games in 8th grade, which was 2012. So for the last 12 years, I've been really collecting video games ever since before collecting video games was really a thing. And even after this is dead, I will still be collecting video games because I don't plan to sell this stuff. I mean, I might when I die or like when I get closer to death, but right now, I have no interest in selling it. But video game collecting as a get rich quick scheme definitely looks like it's starting to die off. Let's throw it back to 2018. 2018, we began to see the crash of NES and Super Nintendo collecting. We saw these games going from crazy expensive, starting to fall down to really what these games are worth, which is anywhere between $5 and $30 for the more common stuff, and then the more rare stuff was like maybe $2,000, $3,000 at most, with the exception of the NEC cards. And then throw it to 2019, a couple months later, we saw these conventions pop up, like Portland, obviously. Every single year people go there and games just fly off the shelf. But for whatever reason, in 2019, all these conventions started having less sales, or at least it appeared that way. I remember seeing stuff on Friday that would still be there on Sunday that in the years prior would have been completely gone before Friday was even over. A lot of times completely gone before Thursday was over because, all the YouTubers and stuff get early access. 2019 was also my biggest year for video game collecting. I added over 300 games to my collection that year. Now, for the most part, these are all games that I played. These are Xbox 360 games, Game Boy games, PlayStation 1 games, PlayStation 2 games, you name it. But in my hometown of Lexington, Kentucky, there's also several other YouTubers. I don't live there anymore, unfortunately, but in my hometown, there are several YouTubers who are now giants of the medium, such as Phoenix Resale. Now, he and I will go around to the same exact stores, the exact same yard sales, the exact same conventions, everything. So he obviously was vlogging a lot more back then, and I was still just talking about gaming news like I do right now. So I didn't get to really show what, the collecting scene was like in our city back then. But then he did at the same time. He showed everything. You could see fat stocks everywhere. And then 2020 comes. Obviously, everybody's at home because of the pandemic. And then the one thing that really kind of got really weird at this time was people started buying retro video games. I honestly thought we were going to see modern games skyrocket in price, which they did, but video games across the whole spectrum just skyrocketed. I remember towards the end of 2019, I bought a kind of loose, kind of complete in box copy of Contra, and I think I paid like $200 for it. But I remember looking on eBay at that same time, looking at other NES games that I wanted, and I saw a version of that exact same version that I had. The only thing I'm missing is a couple little odd ends that came in the box. I had the box in the game, but similar, conditions were going for over $1,000. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then I turned on my next podcast. And then at this point in time, I was obviously running and skateboarding every single day. Now I live in El Paso, Texas, so you can't really skate, just run. But at this point in time, every single day when I go skate and run, I would be listening to podcasts. And I was listening to an episode of the CU podcast about mid-June or late July around that time. And a copy of Super Mario 64 ended up selling for like $1.5 million. And at this point, I was beginning to think it before then, but at this point, it was really like, oh my God, we are living in a bubble. This video game collecting bubble, when this pops, a lot of people are going to hurt. So at this point in time, I kind of railed back on my game collecting because I'm not going to pay these crazy prices. So I continued to buy common things that are really good games, like on Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, things that if I spent $100 for it and then it's worth $10 in a year, I'm not going to really care. Not things that if I spend $2,000 on it, it's going to be $100 in a year. I do not want to get in that situation. Now, let's jump up into 2021, early 2022. Video game grading and video game collecting kind of skyrocketed. I started getting TV shows for it, started getting more YouTubers popping up that are just buying games to resell them to other people. It was really kind of a messy situation for game collecting at this point in time. At this point in time, video game collecting kind of became really spammy and really scammy. All these people who are getting video games graded, and I'm one of them, I got one game graded just as a test. I sent in a fake copy of Donkey Kong 64 complete in box, and it got graded. So at this point, and I never posted about that because I didn't want to be that guy or get in trouble for doing that. But I'm going to talk about it now because, obviously I'm not going to sell it. I just took it out of the casing. But it's like, they weren't really testing games to make sure that they were real. And I'm not the only person who did that. There were tons of people who came out doing that. And there was even people who would send in games and allegedly get games back. That wasn't their copy of the game. It wasn't their condition of it. And now there's a whole class action lawsuit against all these graded video game companies. All these people who saw video games getting in as like a get rich quick scheme, like that dentist who ended up buying like I think it was like $1 million worth of games in like a 1.5, 2 year time span. He completed an NES collection, I believe. Like that guy's gonna lose a lot of money. Now, obviously, he owns his own practice and stuff, so he's not gonna care. But that's a lot of money to lose for like regular everyday folk. And there was people like that that got in, dropped not, obviously $1 million, but like 30, 40, $50,000. And now it's nothing. Like I keep coming back to, I believe, Spider-Man on the Sega Genesis. Or maybe it was the Master System. I know it was Spider-Man on some Sega console. During this time period, it was selling for like $10,000, $15,000, and now it's super low. The original Mario on NES was selling for like $1 million, and then at another point it got down to like 500,000 and 300,000, and now you can get a complete in-box high-grade version of that game for around like 35, 40,000, which is still a lot of money. But when you think about what I went from a million all the way down here, that's crazy. And then there was that guy who had the Nintendo PlayStation. Privately, he had offers for 1.5 million. When he finally ended up selling it, it was like 200, 300,000. Still a lot of money, but that just there shows that video game collecting has gone from this big bubble of get rich quick down to this, kind of coming back to reality, kind of coming back to just you and me and everyone in between who actually cares about this stuff and doesn't view it as just something to make money off of. And now let's fast forward to the beginning of 2024 for my personal anecdotal evidence for why video game collecting is dying. As you guys know, I moved from Lexington, Kentucky to El Paso, Texas. And during that time period, I lost a lot of my games in the move because I shipped them through UPS. And then for whatever reason, boxes just got lost. Now there was one game in those boxes on the Xbox 360 that I had paid like $8 for in like 2018. It was called X-Blades. At the beginning of this year, I began seeing it on eBay selling for like $300, $400. And then just a couple weeks ago, I saw it selling on eBay for about $80, $90. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. If this is actually the price of the game now, why did it bubble and then fall so quickly? And then right now, I have seen other copies of it on eBay down to like $45, $50. And in my local markets, I have seen that game down to 35, 40. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, game's not that great. I'm not going to buy it again unless I can get it under $20 again. But seeing more rare games on the Xbox 360 like that, just going up and down like that in price, it kind of, hit me that, hey, this bubble's coming to an end. These people are desperately clinging on to all these random games, trying to inflate the prices to keep the money market going, but it's just not happening. Obviously, right now, with the closure of the Xbox 360 store just a couple of days ago at the time of this video, these games are going to have a short little bump in price, but they're going to come right back down. And even furthermore, for the last couple of years, a lot of people have seen this writing on the wall. Look at YouTubers like Mystic Ryan. He's been doing mass unboxings of grabbing giant lots off of eBay, just complete blind lots, people getting rid of their collections, people having game stores, and the game stores are falling apart, and now they're just selling all these big bundles of games. That's a heavy, heavy sign that video game collecting is, on its way out as far as a money-making scheme goes. I personally believe that video game collecting, as far as making money off of it goes, I think it's dying. I mean, I think about this YouTube channel in general, and your YouTube channel, that guy's YouTube channel, all of these other big YouTubers that you watch. All of us had one thing in common. We got in way, way, way early. This channel right here was made in May of 2015. I posted my first video in March of 2016. And then, of course, you have people like Metal Jesus Rock's been around since 2009, 2010. Angry Video Game Nerd being around even longer than that. All these channels based around video game collecting have all seen their selves go up, come down, go up, come down, and now they're just kind of leveled out. And obviously that's nothing against them, but the big YouTubers of the, I guess, medium having that type of projection, it really shows, because if this was a sustainable market, you would see these, numbers continue to climb or stay at just like a really good, pace, like hopper in the middle. And then you look at my channel, how it was kind of on this decline, and then all of a sudden started talking about video game news, retro game news, making these videos like this. And I saw explosive growth over the last year just because of that. Now, obviously, Rome wasn't built in a day, so you're not going to be able to use YouTube channels entirely as evidence for video game collecting dying. But when you look at the views everyone's getting across the board, kind of looks like it. When you're looking at all, the different entertainment mediums that everyone's doing, like I mentioned the CU podcast, they didn't break up, but they dropped down to one podcast a month just because the news is just down. And then let's look at, all these retro consoles as well. Analog was kind of the premier one. And then now we have all these random ones popping up that are just like trying to get in on the money real quick. And then furthermore, we have all these emulation handhelds that keep coming out, which I have nothing against them. They are perfect. I love them. But we have all these retro emulation handhelds coming out, and they're not exactly all, grade A quality. Some of them are really bad, some of them are really good, but they're trying to get in on that retro collection vibe right now. I really kind of see overall video game collecting moving back into the way it used to be between like 2013 and like 2019, right at the end. I think we're going to see a lot of these prices stick around. Some of them are going to just fall off the face of the earth. Like we're seeing it right now with NCAA 2014. Obviously, we got NCAA 24 that just came out, but 2014 should have stayed up. That was the last game, the last era of EA football. I overall really do believe that video game collecting is going to go back to being a small little niche, and that we are just going to end up, deflating back to just being our own little safety, tight knit group of people. Like when I look at my YouTube comments now, obviously this channel's grown a lot, but I don't recognize half of you. And then a bunch of people comment that, have been commenting on my channel since 2016. And for the longest time, it was just names that I recognize. Obviously, as I grow, there's going to be more people come in, but I see all these people that talk to me, whether it be in my Twitter DMs, my Instagram DMs, wherever it be, people ask me questions about video game collecting. And a lot of these people, it's like, I've never talked to you before, but I like it. But it just shows that like this had explosive growth overnight, people realizing about it. But obviously as well, like we are probably the youngest generation of video game collectors that there will ever be. Like Gen Z, we are probably the last of the last. Now the boomers were like the original collectors of video games that got in way back in the 70s. They're about to die off. And their stuff is about to be sold by their families online. We're going to get really good deals on a lot of this stuff. Magnavox Odyssey, Commodore 64s, NESs. There's so much stuff that is about to get released into the wild over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years that these prices are going to crumble. You might see a complete inbox Odyssey right now, and it might be like $1,000, maybe even more, because I haven't looked at the buying one in years. The last time I looked, they were about $1,000. Think about how many of those are about to be released into the wild when these boomers die off here soon. Like, just everything that we think is expensive and rare now is just going to flip upside down on its head. Overall, video game collecting is dying. We're going to go back to the way we used to be. And in my opinion, that is a very good thing. All these people, if you're watching this and you own rated video games, get out while you can. Because I promise you, when the bubble bursts all the way, it will not be kind to you. And I personally even have the power to destroy this market to a certain degree. As I mentioned in a video the other day, I really love Yakuza. I own several different Yakuza collecting items that you don't know exist or you might know exist. I own 5 of the PlayStation 3. The reason I own 5 of the PlayStation 3 is because I kept ordering them and then they had a little nick here, a little nick there, fingerprints here. I wanted one that was perfect. So I have 5 of them. That PlayStation 3 is worth about $400, $500 now. As far as I know, there's only about 2,000 of them around. If I really wanted to, just looking at what's on the market, because there's not that many, I could personally crash that market if I wanted to. I have several complete in-box NES games, some of which that are sealed. If I really wanted to, these games are games that I bought 10 years ago at yard sales, church sales, eBay lots. I have so much stuff that if I really want to, I can crash this market. I'm obviously not of age to be selling this stuff off yet, but the people who are, my collection is just tiny. I'm 26 years old. The people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s that have collected games have way more ability to crash the market than even I do. And I'm one person, and I know there's at least going to be several hundred of you watching this video who also have things in your collection that could crash this market. The people who buy graded games, buy games expensive for no reason, and send them off to get graded and come back, you're the type of video game collecting that is dying off. All of us here who buy our games to collect or the history of it, we will still be around. So in conclusion, video game collecting is dying, and that is a great thing. We are taking the power back from the people who tried to scam everybody over this for the last couple of years, and little by little by little, it's going to be growing and growing back to the way it used to be. And just to strike a little bit more fear to the graded game collecting people, as an OG YouTuber, I was friends with a bunch of OG YouTubers who are now giant. I know 3 YouTubers who own Nintendo World Championship cartridges that have never came out about it. There are more cartridges of that game out there that is in hands ready to be sold that could bring that price down than you know about. At my size, I am the biggest video game collecting YouTuber of the whole Mexican community. I talk to a lot of people at conventions in Mexico. I know, the ins and outs of Mexican game collecting. They have so many things that if they were to start coming out with it, if they had any interest in YouTube making, that they could crash the market as well. Video game collecting, as far as the graded collectors and the opportunist collectors, your days are numbered. That type of collecting is dying off in the video game scene, and it's just a matter of time. But the rest of you who buy your games to play, who wants to, experience gaming as it was whenever that game came out, you're in great hands. Better days are ahead. We've won. We've stood out and we've won. Video game prices are falling across the board. Interest in video game collecting is going down. We won. That's all I can really say is we won. Video game collecting is dying. We won. Graded collectors and opportunists, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Now, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think? Are you glad video game collecting is dying? Are you worried about it? Are you a graded collector? Are you an opportunist? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, try not to die, and we'll see you in the next video.